Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. I'm Brother Ali, and welcome to Face to Floor. God willing, we are going to have our 7th lesson on the Guiding Creed, which is an explanation of the Aqidah, the doctrine of Ibn Asakir. Inshallah, today we're going to talk about the rational judgments and the significance of the intellect in Islam. So let's review first, insha'Allah ta'ala, that we mentioned in our last session. We talked about the sources of knowledge. As we said today, God willing, we're going to talk about the rational judgments. The last lesson we talked about the sources of knowledge. And we mentioned that there are 3 sources of knowledge: the sound senses, meaning the sound here meaning the healthy senses, the reliable report, and we mentioned that that was subdivided into 2 categories: the reliable report of the mutawatir reliable report, meaning this is a mass witness and mass transmitted report, meaning from the onset, from the beginning, you have an event that's witnessed by a large number of people, they convey it to a large number of people, so on and so forth, in a way that it's not conceivable that all of those people would conspire to lie. And then we mentioned also the prophetic report, that although the report may come from one person, coming from a prophet, we accept it as being true. And we went into some explanation of why we believe what a prophet says, and the prophets, they demonstrate that they are prophets. And Islamically, when we speak of a prophet Islamically, a Nabi, we mean a man who receives divine revelation from the Creator and he conveys it. So a prophet proves that he's a prophet by performing miracles. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last of the prophets, he performed numerous miracles. Some of them were transmitted by the tawatur method, they were mutawatir hadith reports, meaning large numbers of people witnessed that miracle or those miracles and conveyed them to large numbers of people, so on and so forth, meaning down through the generations, in a way that it's inconceivable that all those people would lie. An example of that was the water springing from between the Prophet's fingers, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On more than one occasion, the water was sprung from between his fingers. This is not, of course, this is not customary. This, by definition, a miracle is not something customary. But it was an event. It happened several times, and it was witnessed by multiple people, and they conveyed it. So this is one example of a miracle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was transmitted by the tawatur method, and as a result, we believe that he performed miracles. We believe that he is a prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we believe in what he taught, whether it be about the news of the previous times, meaning, for instance, the authentic story regarding Prophet Moses, for example, or Prophet Abraham, or Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. Also regarding the events, the futuristic events, whether they are of this life or the hereafter, meaning futuristic events, for example, the appearance of the Mahdi, the guided one, who will unite the Muslims before the end of this world. Also the return of Prophet Jesus alayhi salam, and that he will return and he will govern, he will rule by the sacred laws that were revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are some of the futuristic events of this life. And then also some of the we believe in the futuristic events that the Prophet told us sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the afterlife, whether, for instance, the life of the grave, what occurs to the person in the grave, or what will happen on the Day of Judgment. These are events, futuristic events beyond this world, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us. And although he is one person, he is a prophet. He demonstrated that he's a prophet by the performance of miracles. And prophets, by one of their attributes, is that prophets don't lie. So we take his word on what he said about these matters. And again, it's not a blind sort of faith. It is based on proofs. Our belief in the prophets of Allah Ta'ala, of the Creator, are based on proofs and not just feelings or emotions. And then we mentioned the third source of knowledge is reason. And we said that that too is broken down into two different categories. That also is broken down into two categories. There is that which is known by, and I'm using it with, let me clarify the definition, intuition. Intuition here, we don't mean a feeling, but intuition meaning something which is known immediately to the mind, and it does not have to go through a process of steps. Like, for example, to know that a part of a given object must be smaller than the entirety of that given object. The whole, the part is smaller than the whole, and the whole is larger or greater than the part. This is something that once a person understands the terms, he immediately or she immediately understands the conclusion. They understand it. So it doesn't require a person to go through a series of steps. And then we mentioned deduction. That, for example, if A is bigger than B and B is bigger than C, then from that we can deduce the relationship between A and C, that A must necessarily be bigger than C. So in summary, the three sources of knowledge: the sound senses, the reliable report, and the use of reason. The use of reason meaning the use of the intellect. So inshallah today, as we said, we're going to talk about the three rational judgments. We're going to talk about the three rational judgments, inshallah. Now let's establish that Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, meaning the Sunni Muslim orthodoxy, the Sunni Muslim majority, that we are balanced between the use of reason and understanding revelation. Because you have some people, and we're going to devote a lesson to them, but you have some people such as those that were called, they weren't in reality Muslims, but they were called usually in the books, the Orientalist books, they will refer to them as the quote-unquote Muslim philosophers. So you have people like that, and also a sect called the Mu'tazila, who they gave reason, logic, the use of logic, or alleged use of, let's say the alleged use of logic, they gave the alleged use of logic priority over revelation. So this was one extreme. We as Sunnis, we understand that reason, meaning the use of the intellect, the aql, the use of the aql is the means by which revelation is understood. The philosophers, for instance, they, meaning the ones that claim to be Muslim, they gave priority to their logic and reasoning over the revelation. In reality, there is no contradiction between logic and reason and revelation. In reality, there isn't. But the revelation is our foundation. The philosophers started with an idea in their mind, which was not taken from revelation. They started with an idea from their mind, from their opinions, and then they tried to make the revelation suit their opinions. And then so we're in the middle. The one extreme are the philosophers and the Mu'tazila. On the other extreme are those who claim to adhere to revelation, but some of them will outright say, but we do not use our minds. And this is, for example, a sect known today as they call themselves the Salafis. The Sunnis, we call them the Wahhabis. We're going to talk about that bi-idhnillahi ta'ala in the next lesson. So I don't want to go too far ahead. But just to understand that revelation, that reason, the intellect, the aql, is the means by which one understands the revelation. Allah Ta'ala revealed in the Quran, وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. And this verse is in Surah Al-Mulk. This verse means that some of the disbelievers in the afterlife, they will say that if we had listened, meaning taken heed, and used our minds, if we had taken heed, meaning listened, if we had listened and used our minds, then we would not be inhabitants of the hellfire. Because of their refusal to use their minds, this was a reason for them to be in a state of blasphemy, in a state of disbelief, and this was the cause for them to be condemned to hellfire. So we use our minds. We have to use our minds, because the one who is sincere, how are you going to know what the truth is? Some people worship cows. They have no rational proof for the worship of a cow. Some people worship the sun. Some people worship Buddha. Some people worship Shiva. Some people worship, they used to worship what they call him Osiris or Isis. People worshiping various things among the creations. There's no proof. They don't have a rational proof for what they worship. They don't have a rational proof for what they worship. The true belief is consonant. It complies. It follows. It does not contradict the judgment of reason. So inshallah, now let's talk, with that said, let's talk about the three rational judgments. The scholars of Ahl Sunnah, they mention the three rational judgments. Al-Hukmu al-Aqli, the judgments of the aql, of the intellect, of the mind. The sound mind we're talking about. By sound mind, we don't mean somebody who is insane. We don't mean somebody who is stubborn and refuses to accept the truth. We're talking about what the mind naturally leads itself to. So the first category is the what we say the wajibul wujud, the one who is necessarily existent, and this refers to Allah Ta'ala and His attributes. And of course, when we use the word he, his, or him in our lessons, we don't mean that God has an actual physical gender. It's a means of speech. So Allah Ta'ala is the one who is necessarily existent. This is one category of the rational judgments. The second is that the rational impossibility, that which the mind says it does not have, this thing does not have the potential to exist under any circumstances. And the third category is the rational possibility. The mind says, reason, it says that this thing has the potential to exist. It may not exist in reality, but the intellect says that this thing, it is permissible to my mind that I can accept that this thing could potentially exist. And this includes both what is customary and what is uncustomary. So now let's go to the beginning top of well, let's mention the first of these and explain, inshallah. So we said Allah Ta'ala is He is wajibul wujud, meaning He is the one who is necessarily existent. Okay, why do we say this? Because obviously there are people who do not even believe that there is a creator. So we are saying, Muslims are saying, well, no, the creator's existence is, rationally, the mind says the creator must necessarily exist. Okay, how do we demonstrate this? Well, we are, meaning we, humans, we exist. This creation, universe exists. And as we mentioned in lesson 1, we know that the universe exists, and we know that the person can only posit one of two things, meaning the one who does not believe in God. The atheist can only posit one of two things. Either he can claim that the universe created itself, which is a contradiction, and we'll explain why. Or he can posit, that meaning this is the other position that he may posit, is that the universe is beginningless. And both of these are irrational. Both of these positions are irrational, because the atheists, of course, they like to claim that they are people of the intellect, that they are people of intelligence, they are people of reason, and the underlying basis of atheism is something irrational. And we mentioned in the lecture, The Atheist Delusion, inshallah you can find it here on the YouTube page, that in the Atheist Delusion lecture, we mentioned that really what is driving atheism is an emotional agenda. And the thing is that they have hubris. Typically the atheist has this excessive pride, and he does or she does not want to submit to the Creator. They want to feel that they are quote unquote free, and they are not responsible to the one who created them. Whereas in Islam, we are people who use our mind, and we use it properly, God willing. We use our minds properly, and that we come to the realization that we have a Creator who owns us, and that we must submit to the Creator. So the atheists claim freedom, which in reality we cannot have, because, for instance, we cannot be free from death. So we are not absolutely free. But the atheist claims freedom, which he doesn't have in reality, ultimate freedom. And our position is that we are people of submission. That within our submission to God, then that is where one finds the genuine freedom. Okay, so Allah Ta'ala, we say Allah exists because the universe cannot be self-created. Well, how do we know the universe cannot be self-created? To create is an action. So for something to act, it has to exist. That which does not exist cannot produce something. In a simple phrase, easy to teach good to teach to the children, a thing must exist. A thing must be to do. It must exist to act. The non-existent cannot act. It cannot do something. So the non-existent could not produce something. Another way to look at it. If someone says that this thing, a thing, created itself, he is claiming that this thing existed before it was originated, and that it was originated after it was already existing. Because if he says that this thing created itself, well, in order to create, it had to exist. So it had to exist, according to them, before it was originated, which is absurd. And then to claim that, well, after it was existing, because it has to exist in order to create, that according to them, they would have to logically, that after it was existing, then it originated itself. So they're saying that it was originated after it already existed, this thing, or if they wish to say the universe. So we know that the universe, or a given creation, or the universe itself, could not be self-created because a thing must be to do. The second position that they may posit is that they may claim that the universe is beginningless. And this is also a rational impossibility. That to claim today, if we wish for now, today is the culmination, the limit of what has come before. So if we think of this here, and then we think of a timeline that goes back. Now, according to the atheists, it would have to go back, the one who claims that the universe is beginningless, that it would have to go back literally forever. So if someone says that time goes back, that the creation, the universe, because they don't want to call it creation, that the universe existed forever into the past. So in order to reach the present, the now, this is the limit, the end of that which came, or the limit of what came before. So that which is infinite would not have a limit. Because how would one traverse infinity to reach a limit? This is a logical impossibility. So from what we said, we know the universe cannot be self-created. It cannot be beginningless. So in order to reach the present, there had to have been a start. To reach the end, meaning now the present, to reach this end, there had to have been a start. Now, there's a third position that the atheists posit, which is really an alternative version of the first position, that the universe created itself. Because they have the Big Bang theory, which it is a theory. No one witnessed this. It's a theory. They're looking at things in the creation, and they're doing different mathematical calculations based on certain assumptions, and from that they are coming to certain conclusions which are dhann, which are speculation. It's not based upon a witness, where we talked about the sources of knowledge. To claim that the universe was created by a big explosion, was this witnessed by anybody by their senses? No, it's not witnessed by their senses. Is this something that reached them by reliable report, meaning somebody who existed allegedly 13.5 billion years ago, that he was there at the moment of the Big Bang, and then he conveyed that from generation, and it was conveyed from generation to generation? Of course nobody, they don't claim that. Regarding prophets, well, they don't believe in prophets altogether, so that's not an issue. Is this something deduced from the logic? No, it's not deduced from logic that there was an explosion 13.5 billion years ago. And also, regarding this, it contradicts even their principle regarding statistics. That to claim that from an initial explosion, so there had to have been something that existed to explode. So that's even itself a separate issue, which still requires the universe to have a beginning. Or claim that if they claim it's beginningless, we already discredited that. So we know from experience that from explosions, you don't get order. You don't get order. Somebody, when they want to destroy an apartment complex, I mean like a high-rise apartment complex, they use demolition teams and they explode it. You don't get order from an explosion. So we mentioned in the lesson on the atheist delusion that when we put the 10 cards in a bag and we shook up the bag and then we randomly picked the cards out, and we said, and the chance of taking those 10 cards out in sequential order, just 10 cards, was 1 in 3.6 million. To take number 1 out, and then number 2, and then number 3, number 4, number 5 out in sequential order, randomly. That's 1 in 3.6 million. And if we add five more cards, the chance of taking out those cards 1 through 15 in sequential order, I believe we said the chances was 1.3, if I remember properly, 1.3 trillion. So this is it's not a complicated process, but it's statistically practically impossible to get those cards in sequential order. And that's just for cards. So what about the universe, which is astoundingly complex? That to say that this happened basically by chance, by an explosion, and then by chance from this explosion we got this astounding order. Not only order, you've got life, and you even have human consciousness, and all of this happened by itself. That this is something that the reasonable and sincere person, they do not accept this. The reasonable and sincere person does not accept this. So let's go back. We said that Allah Ta'ala, He is wajibul wujud, meaning His existence is necessary. He's the one who is necessarily existent. Because we know that the universe could not have created itself, and the universe could not be beginningless, and as we just said, it cannot be just by chance, which is still claiming that it created itself. So we know that since the universe can't be self-created, can't be beginningless, can't happen by chance, then something other than the universe created the universe. So we say, indeed, there is a creator who created the universe. And we said that the creator, the one who created the universe, also would have certain attributes. The one who created the universe would have no beginning, would not be created. The one who created the universe would have no end, hence not subject to time. It has no beginning, has no end, is not subject to time. That the creator would not be dependent upon anything of the universe because the creator existed before the universe. That the creator would not be similar to anything of the universe because the creator created the universe and doesn't have the properties of the universe, such as what? Space, time, dimensions, mass, volume. These are properties of created beings, age. That the creator will be clear of all this because the creator existed before the creations, and the creator existed before the characteristics of the creations, and of course the characteristics of the creations are themselves creations. So the creator existed before the creations. That we would know that the one who created this universe is also attributed with knowledge. Knowledge. Allah Ta'ala revealed, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Is it not the case that the one who creates is knowledgeable, and He is Al-Latif, the one who is merciful, and Al-Khabir, the one who knows everything? That indeed, the ayah, the Bala, and without doubt, indeed, Allah is the one who knows everything. The one, when you look at the complexity of this universe, this universe is not arranging itself by itself. There has to be, meaning the judgment of reason is that there must be a creator. That's why we say that Allah's existence is a rational necessity. He is the one whose existence is a necessity. The second category is the rational impossibility. And the rational impossibility is that which the mind says this thing cannot potentially exist. We're not talking about something simply far-fetched. We're not talking about something that's not likely to happen. Like, for instance, a person gets up on top of a 30-story building, jumps off the roof, and he hits the ground and walks away. Reason, logic says it's possible. It's possible. But it is extremely statistically very unlikely. But it doesn't entail a contradiction. What is a rational impossibility? So for example, a square that is a circle. This is a rational impossibility. Because we recognize the rule of non-contradiction. The rule of non-contradiction is that a thing cannot both be and not be in the same regard at the same time. So for instance, I cannot be literally standing and literally sitting at the same time. Literally, because stand, the person may say, well, I take a stand on this issue, when they might be sitting. This is using words, we say equivocating, using a word with one sense in one statement and using it in another sense in another statement without being clear, making it clear. But literally, I cannot be standing and sitting as I am at the same time, because those two conditions are mutually exclusive. I can be standing and writing at the same time. I can be sitting and writing at the same time. Those are not mutually exclusive positions, but I cannot be literally standing and literally sitting at the same time. I can be standing at one point and I can be sitting at another point, but I cannot do both at the same time. So the rational impossibility is that which the mind says it could not exist at all. And we say that the power of Allah Ta'ala is not related to the rationally impossible, and that this is not a weakness for the Creator, but it is an indication of God's perfection. And what does this mean? Sometimes people will encounter, for example, philosophy students and atheists, and they will pose certain questions. And we have to be careful how we respond to these questions. We don't respond to them with yes, and we don't respond to them with no, but rather we demonstrate that the question itself is absurd and invalid. So we don't answer such questions with yes, and we don't answer such questions with no, but instead we say the question itself is contradictory. So be careful, because I'm going to mention a case. So remember, we don't say yes, we don't say no, we say the question is a contradiction, it's an absurdity. Some of the philosopher type people, they will ask a person who claims to believe in God, they will say, can God create one like himself? You don't say yes, you don't say no. You say the question itself is a self-contradiction. How so? The one that is, God, when we say God the Creator, we mean the beginningless one who has originated the universe. If someone says, or somebody asks that question, well, that which is originated would not be beginningless. We said God is beginningless. So if somebody says, can God originate something or create someone like himself, then this person is saying that that which has a beginning, it would be like God, meaning that which, but God has no beginning. So they're saying that that which has a beginning would be also beginningless. So this is a contradiction. You tell them, no, that this question, you tell them, your question, you tell them that this question is itself invalid. It's a contradiction. It's a trick question. This is, be careful, people will ask this. Similarly, and this is important because the Christians will say also similar questions. They will say, they may ask the Muslim, well, you Muslims, you do not believe that Jesus is the child or the son of God. We do not say that Jesus is the son of God. And then they say, but doesn't God have power over everything? Yeah, Allah has power over all the creations. That which cannot potentially exist, it can't exist. And the question itself would be a contradiction. Let's explain, inshallah. To say that Jesus is the Son of God. Well, the Son is the offspring of a parent or two parents. This is what a son is. So, to say that God is the Father of Jesus, this means a father, when we do not refer to the Creator as a father. We say God is the Creator. We don't say God is the Father. The Father, by definition, is one whose reproductive essence has impregnated a female. This is what a father is. And that, what does that mean? That means a part of himself, of the Father, left himself, divided from himself, and impregnated something else, impregnated a woman, for example. So that which divides, that which separates, that which has parts, this is a body. This is an object. This is a spatial entity. Allah, the Creator, is not a body, not an object, not a spatial entity. That which is that which occupies space by definition would be dependent. That which occupies space would be dependent, would be in need of the space that it occupies. So Allah Ta'ala does not occupy. Allah is the creator of space. Before space was, there was a creator. Before space existed, there was a creator. The creator is not attributed with dimensionality. It's not attributed with the characteristics of dimensions. So to say that God has dimensions, and therefore, or let's say, to say that God is a father, therefore has dimensions, well then this would contradict the status of Godhood. Because the one that has dimensions would be dependent upon space, and the Father, by definition, would be dependent upon dimensions. Therefore, fatherhood cannot be attributed to the Creator. And likewise, Jesus, alayhi salam, could not be the offspring of the Creator. Another point regarding this. If someone wants to claim that the rationally impossible, as we've already defined rationally impossible, to claim that the rationally impossible has the potential to become possible, it leads to very, very disgusting things. If somebody says that, well, a human being, Jesus for instance, to claim that a human being could become God, well then an atheist may tell him, well, according to your quote-unquote logic, then a mosquito also has the potential to become God. And this leads to very, very, very ugly things. So all of this, because the person does not understand the correct belief to start with, that God is one in the sense of being the only creator. No one is the creator except Allah. That God is one in the sense that God, Allah, is absolutely unique and different from the creation. So Allah Ta'ala revealed in the Quran, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, that Allah has no equal and is beyond all comparison. So God, Allah, is the only creator, the only one who is beginningless, the only one who has brought all of this into being, into existence. That God is unique with no similar, and that God is one in the sense of being indivisible and not of composition, not composed, as we mentioned in our previous sessions, God is not composed of a material substance, and God is not composed of the spirit. God is not a spiritual being, God is not a material being. God is not something with dimensionality, with size, shape, and these types of direction, distance, place. These are characteristics of spatial beings, and Allah Ta'ala is the creator of space and not dependent upon space or any other or any of the other creations. So this, going back, the rational impossibility is that which the mind, the sound mind, says this thing does not have the potential to exist under any circumstances. It's impossible to exist. And the third category is what we say the rational possibility. The rational possibility is that which the mind says this thing has the potential to exist. Now we're not saying that thing necessarily actually exists, because then that takes us back to the lesson about the rational or the sources of knowledge. We were saying that this thing has the potential to exist. We're not saying it depends. How do we confirm? We can confirm its existence by different means, but we're saying the mind, the intellect, says that this thing may exist. And the rational possibility refers to the entire creation, and it refers to the customary as well as the uncustomary. Let's mention a couple of matters regarding this. I said that it refers to the customary as well as the uncustomary, because the materialists, the atheists, they tend to deny that which they are not familiar with. They'll tell you, well, this can't be. And it's not something that is rationally impossible. It's just something that for them, they are not familiar with it. I'll give a couple of examples. Well, for one, we go back. First of all, for the atheists, the materialists, one of their problems is that they are assuming that the material world, what is perceived by the senses, that they and even what they use through their instruments, that they're claiming that this is all that exists, and that these things themselves are making things happen by themselves, because they can't posit that there's something. When I use the word beyond, I don't mean by distance or direction or space, but they don't want to posit, let's say, that there's something other than the creation, the universe, that is making things happen. They don't want to admit, well, there's something other than the universe that is in reality making the things happen. Because the universe, according to them, they have different theories, but to simplify it, they believe the universe is composed of particles and energy. The particles themselves cannot give themselves their characteristics. The energy itself cannot give itself its characteristics. It requires something other than themselves to make them the way they are and to behave the way that they do. This is clear. This table, it's made up of particles. The particles did not agree amongst themselves to produce wood. It doesn't happen that way. It can't happen that way. Even the atheist will admit that these particles individually, they don't have intelligence. They don't have foreknowledge. They don't have the will to specify themselves to be one way as opposed to another way. And then, according to them, these millions and millions and millions and millions of particles would have to agree to arrange and assemble themselves to produce a tree, originally from wood, to produce a tree. All of this, according to them, if we follow their theories to their logical, if you wish, conclusion, all of this would be happening by themselves. And this is not reasonable, and it's even they have to admit that this isn't true. So the atheists, because they want to relegate, want to limit reality to what is of the material realm, that they will usually deny things that are beyond their familiarity, because it will undermine their ideology. So, for example, they will deny the realm of the angels or the realm of the jinn, because this is something beyond their senses. And there's no rational basis to reject that. Besides, practically every tradition on earth recognizes that there are jinn. They don't mind I call them Jinn, but they recognize that there are beings that exist and they are not normally perceived by our senses. This is not something that contradicts the mind. Also, to give a couple of analogies, just to show how their reasoning is not sound. That if one were to take this materialistic paradigm, if you wish, this worldview, and if you were to take someone from Anchorage or Nome, Alaska, and they were to go and visit some of these tribes deep in the Amazon jungle who have practically no contact with the outside world. And if these native people there had this materialistic, atheistic worldview, which typically they don't, that if they had such a worldview, so if these people from Alaska encountered them and they told them that where we are from in Alaska, that where we are from, the water it gets in a solid state like stone. Because what would those people of the Amazon jungle, they would know water in two states, a liquid state and a gas state, a gaseous state. They would only know it in those two states. They would have never encountered, by the norm of things, they would have never encountered water in a solid state. They would say, how can water exist? If they had that mentality, they would tell those Alaskans, how can water exist in a solid state? This is something that is impossible. It's not impossible. It's only unfamiliar to them. Similarly, these people from Alaska, they may tell them that we live in a place where for several weeks each year it is light, it does not get dark. Maybe the darkest it gets is like early twilight. It does not get dark. It stays light all for an entire 24-hour period. that those people in the Amazon, for instance, if they had that mentality, they would say, how can this be? All the generations amongst us, we report that the sun rises in the general eastern region of the sky and sets every day in the general western of this region of the sky. It cannot be the case. And we have light, we have day, and then there is night, and it gets very dark at night. It cannot be the case that it stays light for an entire 24-hour period, and you're claiming, they're saying to them, you're claiming that this happens for multiple weeks of the year. So the issue here for our case of the native people here, the example, or for the atheist slash materialists, is that they are denying things on the basis of their lack of familiarity with them. And as Muslims, alhamdulillah, we are open-minded people regarding things like this. We say that, well, just because something is unfamiliar to me, it does not mean that it doesn't exist. Get another quick analogy. If you look at the technological developments that have occurred in the last 200 years, if you were to take someone from, I'm here in Western Tennessee, in Memphis, Tennessee, 200 years ago, and if someone, we do not believe in time travel, just to be clear, but if somebody, for example, he fell asleep and somehow he was preserved from the year, let's say 1800, and then he, for example, he awoke and somebody, they took him directly, he couldn't see, they blindfolded him, and they took him directly to Times Square, New York City. And then they took him out of the van, took the blindfold off, and they put him there. This man, he might literally go insane because of what he is seeing is so far beyond his conceptual worldview. This is, say, for example, 200 years ago, a simple farmer, that he's seeing things that he cannot, as we say in vernacular, he cannot wrap his mind around. But these things that exist in technology, meaning cell phones, electricity, lights, cars, all of these, none of these things existed 100 years ago, or 200 years ago. Subways, he's seeing all of these things besides what the people are, the cultural traditions of the people. But the technologies, he's seeing these things and he cannot, his mind may not be able to ingest what he's witnessing. And why is that? Because he's having a hard time with this because it's something beyond what he's familiar with. So for Muslims, we say, mashallah, that there are things that exist that are beyond our senses. We understand that Allah is the one who creates everything. Allah is the one who creates what is customary. Allah Ta'ala is the one who creates things that are uncustomary. And that goes to the issue of the miracles. The miracles of the Prophets, ﷺ, are not something irrational. They are not something illogical. But they are things that are contrary to the norm. The miracles are not only rationally possible, the miracles are actual. That the prophets of Allah performed miracles. For example, we mentioned the springing of the water between the fingers of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. Also for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he would have the food in his hands, it would make the sound of tasbih, it would make the sound of of exalting Allah. We mentioned the case when the Prophet was in the mosque, alayhi salatu wassalam, that there was the tree trunk that made the sound of crying. That the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when one of the companions, Qatada, he was injured, his eye was injured, and it was out of the socket and hanging on his cheek, and he took it and he placed it back in the socket, and his eye was completely healed. So there are numerous miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So and they don't contradict reason; they just contradict custom, meaning what is the norm for us. And not, as we said, not only are the miracles possible, the miracles are actual. And the miracles, as we said in the beginning of the lesson, it is by the performance of miracles that we know that a prophet is a genuine prophet. So let's summarize, inshallah. That we said that the Islamic creed, in Islam, that reason and revelation are not in conflict. but reason is the, meaning intellect, that reason is the means by which one understands the revelation. And when we, as we've been talking about the Muslim belief in God, it is completely rationally consistent that we believe in one creator who is the only creator, who has no beginning, who has no end, that the one who existed before creation does not need the creations, that the one who existed before creation and is the creator of the creations is not similar to that which is created. This is something that the mind accepts. So we're not praying to objects, we're not praying to icons, we're not praying to images of the mind, the things in our imagination. We don't pray to things in nature. We believe in and worship the one creator of everything, who does not need and who does not resemble anything. We're not calling people to worship something floating around on a cloud. We're not telling people to pray to the so-called flying spaghetti monster. We're not calling people to worship the product of their imagination. We are inviting people to worship the creator of creation. And again, alhamdulillah, there is no doubt that this is the truth. This is the religion that the Creator has commanded humanity to follow. And in truth, the one who follows it with sincerity, he or she will be a winner in this temporary life and in the hereafter. And for anyone who is watching and you wish to embrace Islam, it is very, very easy. All one needs to do is say, I bear witness nothing is worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That's it. The person does not need to have witnesses, does not need to take a ritual bath beforehand. All that he or she needs to do is have the intention in the heart, the desire to become Muslim, and say what I just said. No, and they can say even something simpler than that. They just say, no one is God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And that is enough for the person to become Muslim. We ask Allah Ta'ala to guide us and forgive us and grant us the good endings. Again, thanks for watching. Please share these videos. Please subscribe and like and share these videos. And inshallah, through your support, we'll be able to keep producing more and more videos. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Walhamdulillah. Wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. And Allah knows best.